I wanted to do something a little bit different. Not really that different, because you hear about tiers all the time and their value in drafting in fantasy basketball. So let's approach it in a slightly different way. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and for every comment and like, I will plant one tree. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is closer than you think, and right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets. Download the FanDuel, or download FanDuel.com. That doesn't sound right. Download the FanDuel app, or go to FanDuel.com. That's better to get started. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We're available on all platforms. If you are watching on YouTube, there is a new feature that I've seen and told about. It's called Hype. And it helps smaller creators get bumped into the algorithm. So, if you are watching this, hype this video. I want to see it pushed up and get a little bit of a boost. I don't know how it works or if it's going to work or what it's going to do. But do your usual thumbs, do your usual subscribes, but chuck a hype on it. I think that's the phrasing, and we'll see how it goes. Now, I have been a proponent, not necessarily of tiers, because I didn't invent that. That's not something new, right? But we talk about values of drafting players, and the idea of best player available is a nonsensical one to me. Not that you shouldn't have a consideration of best player available, but the fact is you don't know who the best player available is. So the idea is don't have a punt or don't have a strategy, just take best player available. When you get to a spot in a draft, 5th round or something, there could be 20 guys who are the best player available. There's no consensus, there's no guarantee, there's no lock-in best guy there. And as you get further down the draft board, like I've said many times, people go, this is a perfect pairing and this is the way to go. And again, in essence, I think that that's just not true, and actually makes it a harder experience for you to draft. When you're looking at these things, you should be looking and saying, right, I've got 12 guys here, 15 guys here that make sense. Who do I want? Who do I trust more? Who do I trust less? Who's maybe got higher upside because I went with a safer one beforehand? And there's just many different ways that you can go. The idea of I took someone at 40, he was actually 43rd, oh my God, you reached, is stupid. We don't know. All it takes is to go from 45 to 40 is 0.05 steals per game. And I say that as an exaggeration, but also not really. That's what it takes. You shoot 48 instead of 47.5 from the field, and you jump 3 spots, and now it's bang on and not a reach. The idea of ordinality of this is the 41st best player, this is the 42nd best player is just a garbage concept that we love because we love a listed rank and that sort of stuff. It just isn't real. The idea of tiers is to try and put people in similar groups where if you made arguments for one guy over the other, you could say, yeah, maybe I agree or maybe I don't, but whatever. I get it. A tier is not, say, Anthony Edwards jumping in with Shaedon Sharpe. You couldn't argue with a straight face that there's any equivalence there at all. So what we've tried to do in the past, we've done shows here are the point guard tiers, and here's shooting guard tiers, and here's small forward tiers, but had an epiphany. Well, not really epiphany because it could be completely wrong. There's a long introduction here. Is that when we look at that stuff, is that point guards aren't the same. Some point guards are 30 usage players with 5.5 or 6 assists, Jalen Brunson. Some point guards average 17 points and 10 assists. Yet they're both point guards. So how do you value those guys similarly? Obviously one guy's better, but you might have a center who's a rebounds, field goal percentage, blocks player, or a center who hits threes, but with high free throws and bad field goals. But they're both centers, so put them in the same tier, but based on what you're doing with your team, it doesn't really make sense to consider those guys equivalent at all. That's part of the issue with category leagues in fantasy as well, in trying to value players, because everything depends on what you've done previously, what is also coming up, and what does an individual player do versus the easy bucket of center, power forward, small forward. Now, those positions still exist, and I think we should be widening the range of that when we're creating roster spots in leagues and not narrowing it, because again, it's pretty restrictive and it's rather arbitrary at times. So I'm trying to do something a little bit different here. I wanted to look at statistical groupings instead of positions. Now, a lot of that will follow positions, but there are times when a small forward might provide you point guard-like assists. But if we separate them out, how do we compare and contrast it? What I'm doing in this particular show, the first one of these shows, is I want to talk about the monsters. I want to talk about the stat stuffers. And how am I determining that? Well, I took a sample of what I think are the top 200 players for fantasy this season. I looked at the averages of the top 200 in the 8 standard categories, not including turnovers. And I wanted to see which players, based on the way that I'm projecting this season out, would have an above average, not a negative or a positive, an above average. I think negative and positive is a poor way of framing it, and we all do it, and I'm trying to not do it. Who has an above average contribution in at least 5 of the 8 categories? To me, that is a stat stuffing sort of a player. You are getting above average contributions in 5 or more categories. And I'm going to use those sort of ideas to put these players into tiers. Now, this is going to be largely concentrated around the top of a draft board, but what I think becomes really interesting in this sort of an exercise is that there are players who you'll find available in round 12, in pick 130, 150, 110, 95, who might actually be above average contributors in 5 or more fantasy categories. And can they, not to say that they're the hidden secrets, because it's not always about how we build a team, but they're guys who give you a broader range. We can hit specialists who give you 2 positive categories or 2 above average categories. I just did it then. 2 above average categories. We can find those guys littered throughout. But I want to talk about the stat stuffers, the above average in 5 or more fantasy category players, based on my projections, which again, have a level of variance, tolerance, and error in them, and how that plays out. Again, I'm hoping that this does make sense. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Let's talk about it. And then what the other shows are going to be, there'll be things like, okay, so let's tier the players who give you points, rebounds, assists. Let's tier some players who give you rebounds, blocks, field goals. Just to sort of cover a wide range that isn't tied very specifically into positional designation. And again, this won't have as much impact for a points leagues because it does not matter. More fantasy points is better. It literally doesn't matter how you get them. So this is not points league related. Go. Let's take a look at the stat stuffers. Let's start where it's really easy. I don't really need to discuss this. And I debated how I was going to do this or how I was going to position it, but I'm just putting Nikola Jokić in tier 1 by himself. I don't think... Again, I guess the idea of a tier could be that you could make an argument for somebody else to go number 1. I think you can, especially if you're playing Yahoo default where Jokić has 2 games in finals week. That does change it a lot for me, but I'm not catering exclusive to people playing Yahoo default. But I guess the thing is that, like, okay, Wemby could go 1. Maybe you could argue Dončić goes 1. Could Giannis go 1? Could Shea go 1? I guess so. But to me, it made more sense to have Jokić sitting there by himself and the other guys a little bit more interchangeable in the next grouping. Obviously, Jokić is going to be an above average contributor in multiple categories. Again, there's no controversy in saying that. Based on my projections, I've got him at above average in 7 of 8 categories. He was great last season. I expect regression. I don't think he plays 37 minutes or has 1.8 steals or shoots 42 from 3 or averages a triple-double. But that's fine. I still think he's the number 1 guy on this list at the way that I've projected it out at the moment. Now, when I'm going through this, you'll see these ADP numbers. That is Yahoo, Fantrax, and then ESPN. So 1, 1, and 2. It is not incorrect to not take Jokić at 1, especially in Yahoo default. It is not incorrect to take Jokić at 1. It is fine if you want to do something else. It's fine if I take Jokić. I don't think we need to spend that much more time on it. The reason that he comes closer to the pack is that Yahoo default playoff schedule. And if you think that there will be, I've got him like at 3 fewer minutes, but what if he plays 4 fewer minutes? Does that bring it closer to the pack? And the difference is pretty close. But I've got him at tier 1. We'll come back with 9 other tiers in a sec. Today's episode, though, is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, and the NFL season is almost here. So FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer now. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And you can use it on many things. Straight up bets, spreads, totals, player props, same game parlays, live parlays, futures bets, other sports, not just the NFL. But of course, it is week 1 of the NFL this week. So if you are ready to play, download the FanDuel app now and do that at FanDuel.com. And you can get started. Get your $300 in bonus bets when that first $5 bet wins. That is FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And don't forget to gamble responsibly. Okay. Like I said, we're here trying to... And this might not be a successful thing that we do here. I think it's got some value. But just talking about a different way of looking at players versus positions, more like contributions. And these are the all-round guys. So we'll just head across here to tier 2. This is not, again, any sort of controversial list. These guys will go top 5 in basically every draft. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Victor Wembanyama, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Luka Dončić. Really, whatever order you want there, I understand it. It's totally okay. I would probably take Wemby 2 in nearly every circumstance, but if you're worried about injury, fine. Shai is the other option that you could take it at 2, not a problem. But if you use my default playoff schedule, the Thunder play 3 games, 3 games, 3 games. Not ideal. You might not want to deal with Giannis's punt free throws. Okay, don't take him at 2. Maybe you're a little bit worried about wear and tear on Luka from playing in Eurobasket. Okay, but I think that is a relatively straightforward tier number 2. You could put all of these guys together with Jokić in one large tier 1 if you wanted to. I'm not going to argue with you. Based on my projections, interestingly, Wemby projects above average in 8 of 8 categories. I believe he is the only player in the league, according to my projections, who projects that way. I find that interesting. Shai's at 7, Luka's at 6, Giannis is only 5. So again, you can look at that and go, okay, does that turn me off him? Now he's obviously got some pretty big strengths, his field goal percentage, his points, big rebounds, good assists, and some of those categories are harder to find later in drafts. So there's value in that. But yeah, he's only a 5 category positive or 5 category above average. But that's your tier 2. Now, again, tiers are also hard because, like, how am I valuing these players that may or may not play games or miss games? And this is not just based on ADP, it's based on some of my valuations. And again, playing the ADP game, which is, if you see someone that you like and their ADP is 30 spots lower, you're trying to split the happy medium to get value on the player, because winning a league is drafting a guy at 80 who turns into 40. Not drafting a guy whose ADP is 80, but picking him at 45 and he becomes the 45th best player. You've really got nothing out of that. So you'll see guys in different tiers. It's where I sort of value them. It doesn't mean they have to be picked in that spot. And that's where we get to tier 3. I went back and forward on who I was going to have in this group, but I'm settling on 2 players in tier 3 of the stat stuffers. Of interest, out of the players that I project to be like top 30 players, only one guy didn't show up as a 5 or more above average category player. That's why we won't talk about Devin Booker on this show. Not that he shouldn't be drafted early, but he does only appear above average in 4. So that's something as well. I've got James Harden and Anthony Edwards in tier 3. You'll notice a pretty big discrepancy in their ADPs. Edwards is 7, 8, and 7. He's going after that first group of players in most leagues. Harden, for some reason, is 17 on Yahoo, 18 on ESPN, 11 on Fantrax. Now, yes, I believe that there will be some issues or some reduction in Harden this season with Kawhi healthy all season. And no, I know there is this scandal about Kawhi, and I referenced at the start of the show, obviously. I don't think that it has any impact on Kawhi or any suspension or anything happening this season. It does look incredibly sus, and I don't know how the league's going to deal with it, but I would say there are going to be very, very big punishments with that. Very big. But I don't think it's going to involve a situation where Kawhi is suspended, which for our fantasy purposes is probably the most important part. From a real life thing, it's a disaster, right? And we'll see exactly where it goes. And at this point, the Clippers are refuting stuff, so I don't know. Anyway, so I don't think it's a situation where Kawhi is getting suspended and Harden's value goes back up. I don't think that's a problem. But I've got Harden and Harden and Tone Edwards in tier 3, even though you'll see a pretty sizable gap in their ADP. Meaning that if you took Anthony Edwards at pick 7, you have a possibility you could get Harden, who I have as a tier 3 guy in a head-to-head categories league, in round 2, and pair those guys together, which would be a pretty bloody good result. The other guy that you'll notice is absent from that group that you might think shouldn't be is Cade Cunningham. And he's in tier 4. Now, do I love Cade? Sure. Have I been ahead of Cade nearly every season? Yes. I'm just not ahead of him this season compared to where others are. I've got Cade in tier 4. My tier 4 is I'll say it's rather large. It's not super large. It's these 5 players. And you'll notice some of the guys that do go in that spot around Anthony Edwards is Cade, and it's Anthony Davis in that area. And I've got them down in tier 4, along with players that are available, in some cases, in round 3. Kevin Durant, Steph Curry at the end of round 2, Karl Anthony Towns, who at the moment I believe is going too high, and Anthony Davis. So Towns' ADP is 10, 9, and 13 across the 3 sites. It's insane to me to take him there. Cade's at 8, 7, and 12. Not that it's insane to take Cade there, but I do think that there is a little bit of a separation with him, with these other guys. Durant and Curry, I know that there are injury concerns, and I know that I've been a little bit down on Durant in the past. I'm not suggesting that he should be taken at 10 or anything, or 9 or whatever, however you want to phrase it. But he is, I think, undervalued here. And then Davis, there is a risk of injury. And again, with the way that I'm looking at this with my Durant ranking, it does change some of the valuations because of the nature of how Z scores and standardization of scores is problematic at times for the way that NBA stats are distributed. So that's why there's a little bit of a change here. But my tier 4 is Cade Cunningham. These are the stat stuffers, 5 or more above average categories. Cade, KD, Steph, Towns, and Davis. Now, there are players who would have been in this tier if we knew that there was no health concerns. Joel Embiid would have been here. Kawhi probably would be in this tier. Honestly, and I know you'll think this is true, but Zion Williamson, on a statistical perspective, would be in this area. But they won't be because of the injury concerns, as I'm sure you're well aware. Tier 5 is a big fella. A lot of guys that I want to look at in this area. It's not just those names that I've got there. Jalen Johnson has an ADP of 26, 27, and for some God known reason, I don't know what's happening on ESPN, but his ADP is 58, Jalen Johnson. Bro, come on. That's insane, right? That's dumb. Jalen, to me, is a really strong second round sort of a player, and this is the area for him. Amen Thompson. He's like in the 30s guy draft. I think he's better than that. I talked about him yesterday on the 30-year players show. He's in tier 5. Josh Giddey, you can get at 56 on ESPN as well, apparently. 37 on Yahoo. As much as I think a lot of what Giddey did last season was not quite real, I do think he, and obviously not signed yet, so this can change, I think he's being underrated somehow. And I've also got Donovan Mitchell in this tier. Now, there are people who want to take Don Mitchell at 10. I don't want to do that. I think the minutes that were down last season will remain down this season. That is how Kenny Atkinson runs things. Don shot 44 from the field. He was 82 from the line. He played just 31 minutes. He had 30 usage. Now, his usage and assists will spike early in the season. No Garland and no Strus. And then it will come down as the season goes on. And he'll be at risk of blowouts and sitting fourth quarters. But I think that he makes sense in this range. And his ADP at that 24, 18, 23 across the sites is reasonable. It's fine. I like the numbers there. I've got 3 more guys in tier 5. And again, some of these names, you'll know a name that I haven't mentioned there. One of them is Trae Young, and he's in this tier. So Trae Young is a popular pick in the first round. If I'm in a points league, I actually think that makes quite a lot of sense. I think there is a reduction in value for Trae in category leagues because of how the free throw percentage category gets skewed in... Sorry, almost dying there. As how the free throw percentage category gets skewed in standardized scoring, in Z-score scoring. And the way that you can easily know that is you can look at Giannis's Z-score for free throws and it's a -6. We all know what a -6 Z-score means in a real-world normal distribution scenario. It's like a 1 in a billion outcome, which is dumb because it happens literally every season. On the flip side to that, the impact of a Trae Young, which is really high in free throws, is overstated. Free throws, as much as you might not think they are, they're actually a low volume, high variance statistic. Year to year, the highest variance or second highest variance without question. Week to week, one of the highest variance categories. Because you're not, yes, the numbers are 85, right? 82, that's a big number. That's a huge number. 82 is big, yeah? But it's 3.5 attempts a game. That's low volume. That's not a big number. And because you're dealing with denominators and numerators, there's so much more variance that gets baked into it. So I think that the way that Durant works as a ranking formula reduces the extreme outliers on free throw percentage quite a bit. So it doesn't value Trae as high. Now, Trae is still a guy, like everyone on this show, who is an above average contributor in 5 of the 8 positive categories. So he's here. But he's in the mix there with Tyler Hero and Scott Barnes. And again, look at the difference. Trae's ADP 11, Hero 44. I'm not saying they're the same guy because they're obviously not. But they both have an above average contribution in 5 categories. They're both a scoring, threes, assists, free throw sort of a player. They're both I would probably in most cases prefer Trae. But the difference isn't as large as you think. And again, one of these things, what if you find Trae sliding in round 2 and then you get Hero in round 4? Well, you've got 2 guys in similar tiers. Pretty good value. And Scottie Barnes, as much as I worry a little bit how the ball is distributed in Toronto, and I get a little concerned about where his percentages, he's shooting his 3-point percentage and his block numbers, which regressed last season, where do they fit? I'm a little worried about it. I think he's relatively safe in this particular spot here. We're going to talk tier 6, which is big. I think we've got about 15 players in tier 6. Let's go through them. The first name on this list is a tier 4 sort of a player, maybe tier 5, and that's LaMelo Ball. But not that I'm particularly worried about injury with him. And again, I know that sounds stupid. I'm not sitting here and go, yeah, well, he's always going to get hurt. I think every player will always get some level of hurt. LaMelo played quite a bit last season. And then as everything slipped away from Charlotte and they were positioning themselves for a draft pick, he had sore wrists, sore ankles. They sat him out of a lot of games. Brandon Miller went down. The team was going nowhere. They sat him out. So it's not that I sit there and go, LaMelo's going to miss 25 games with legitimate injuries. I don't believe that. But what I do believe is that they could be bad enough that the build-up of problems that he's had will lead them to be extra cautious and sitting more games. So that's why I push him down. You also notice Brandon Miller is in this same tier. Miller, I think, is, and I really don't like Brandon Miller that much as a player, but I actually think there's really good value in him. On ESPN, his ADP 75. Now, I know ESPN is a joke site. It's a clown site. They have no idea. These numbers make no sense right over there. Like, who's drafting Jalen Johnson at 58? I mean, I would if he was there, but that's not real. But Miller's going out to the top 50, and to me, I don't think you should let that happen at all. Jamal Murray's in this group. No Russell Westbrook, who took attempts and shots away and shared the court with Murray. So maybe a little bit of a usage and assist bump. He's got injury concerns of his own, but yeah, he's there. I've got Evan Mobley there. Now, Mobley does, it depends on some of the stuff that you look at. He's like a borderline 4 or 5 category. I gave him the bump into the 5 category above average, but it's real close. Like, it's very close as to being whether it's 4 or 5. So he does get this slight nod here. 21, 19, and 36 are his ADPs. I think if Mobley's great. I love him. But we just need to be at sometimes a little cautious. I hope the 3-point shooting sticks. But this seems about right. And same with Tyrese Maxey. Now, he is probably Tyrese Maxey the hardest player to evaluate because you just don't know what's happening with Joel Embiid and Paul George. If Joel Embiid plays 50 games, Maxey is about right here. If Joel Embiid plays 60, Maxey's probably too high. If Embiid plays 30, then Maxey should be up in tier 4. It's really hard to sit there and project someone like Embiid. Like, I think he's going to miss time, obviously, to start the season. But like coming into the season going, he'll play 30 games. I find, someone who's a projector of this stuff, I find that impossible to do. So that's why Maxey's going to come out lower to me. So bear that in mind. If you just make the manual adjustment, depending on how you're trusting Embiid or how much you think Embiid is playing, because that's like a 6 or 7 percentage point usage adjustment to Maxey. And that will push him up higher. The other name in this list on tier 6 is LeBron James. Now, at some point, LeBron will drop off. Well, maybe he won't. I was going to say at some point he'll be injured, but he's been injured in the past. I don't want to invest super high draft capital into a 41-year-old, but he's LeBron, man. Like, what more is there? Some more tier 6 guys. Jaren Jackson's going to miss a little bit of time at the start of the season, but I don't think it's a problem. So I've got him here. His block numbers disappeared last year, and I don't think they're jumping back up necessarily because he's going to be relied upon to do more usage-wise because Bane's not there. But he still does everything else really well. And, again, 5+ average, above average categories. Austin Reeves is here. Denny Avdia is going way too low. I had someone tweet at me and say, hey, Josh, why is Avdia going so high? And I went, he's not. I think he's going too low. And I, again, think that a lot of what Avdia did last season was fake. I think a lot of the hype around him is not warranted, but he's better than this. ADP 64, 102 on ESPN. Like, guys, what are you smoking? What is happening over there? Denny Avdia very clearly in this group to me. I think Alperen Şengün might be going a little bit early in drafts. And I've got him and Bam Adebayo in this same spot, in tier 6. But every one of these players are above average contributors in at least 5 of the 8 positive fantasy categories. Tier 7 is where we get into some of the high upside, low reliability guys who would have been much higher than this in any sort of scenario where they were healthy. Joel Embiid's ADP is around 46. I wouldn't take him inside the top 50, but I have to put him in this area. I've got Zion Williamson. Very high on my per game numbers. I think you'd be surprised to have seen that Zion had that 5, actually he's got 6 categories above average. I think you'd be surprised to know that. Last season on my Durant rankings, he was 23rd. He was 14th in points leagues, Zion. And he did it in 29 minutes a game. Yeah, he only played 30 games, but that's why instead of being in tier 4, he's in tier 7. And the other one is Kawhi, who is currently healthy, but I don't trust that he stays healthy an entire season. He's probably got more ability this year to stay healthier than Joel Embiid, but it's Kawhi, man. Like, there's always something, as evidenced by the story today. Ja Morant also probably could have been about a tier higher, but I don't have any trust in Morant at this point. I think his usage and assists probably rise this season, but he's also here. And then the other one that you can find very late in drafts is Mark Williams, as I should just bring that screen across. Because Williams was an easy top 30, top 40 guy last season. He's playing 32 minutes a night in Charlotte. I don't think that Kaman Malawach and Nick Richards, BDNR, are stealing minutes from Mark Williams. They're not good enough. Now, there's obviously the injury history with Mark, and the Knicks trade is making this ADP push down 86, 77, 96. Cool. I will target him every day in the 70s. Every day. Because this is a tier 4 to tier 5 per game guy. There's more injury guys in tier 7 as well. Not that Derek White's an injury guy, but I do think there's a big risk of minimal games in March, April. His ADP at 40, 36, and 43 is marginally on the high side, but I don't mind it. Kristaps Porzingis, I don't think he plays any back-to-backs this year, to be honest. He looks recovered. He's playing for Latvia in Eurobasket, but his knees have had so many injuries, and I think they keep his minutes a little bit down, especially considering Jalen Johnson and Onyeka Okongwu were there to ease that load. You'll be, I think, a little bit annoyed that Jalen Williams is in this area for me. Jalen Williams is great. I know that. His ADP at 17 is just too high for me. A lot of the extra value that Jalen got last season was there was about a 2-month period where he was the Thunder's starting center, and his field goals, rebounds, and blocks went up. And then as the season went on and Chet returned and Hartenstein returned and Pig Williams returned, he wasn't worth a top 20 pick. He wasn't that good, which is more of a realistic scenario for where he sits this season. So again, if you want to take him in round 2, I wouldn't do it. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. This could very easily be wrong. But I don't think it's just as easy as saying Jalen's an obvious second round guy. I don't believe that. I've got Jimmy Butler in this area. Obviously, he has risks. And I've got Jaylen Brown here, who is not the greatest fantasy contributor. He will have to do more this season through usage. Yes, pretty obviously. But bad free throws, not great assists, although I think they rise this season. And I do have him as at 5, obviously, because he's on the show, above average fantasy categories. Tier 7, the last 4 guys here. We've got the Jedi, OG Anunoby. We've got Cooper Flagg, who, even with my projections at the moment, and as a rookie, I've got him above average in 7 categories. He will be an above average in 8 categories guy in his future. I've got Nikola Vucevic here, and I've got Miles Bridges here. You'll see a wide range of ADPs, but I think they all fit around this area, which is that middle area of the draft, but you're getting a bunch of multi-category contributors in this area. And I think that is an important thing to look at depending on how you've structured the rest of your draft. In tier 8, we're only going to 10 tiers here. Paul George is in here. George shot horribly. His usage was down. He still had really good steal numbers. He's also injured to begin the season. It's possible he's completely done. That's possible. But what if the shooting jumps up 3 percentage points? I'm okay taking him in this area. Miles Turner is here. Again, I try to devalue some of the outlier block numbers because I think there can be artificial inflation there. But he should play more minutes in Milwaukee than in Indiana. I've got Julius Randle, Darius Garland, Jordan Poole, and Desmond Bane all in this area in tier 8. I am much more down on Bane than others. You'll notice his ADP is higher than basically anyone else on this list because he moves from the, at times, number 2 option or number 1 option in Memphis to a very clear number 3 in Orlando. The other guy that I could have had in this area is his teammate Franz Wagner. He was a 4 or 5 category above average guy, depending on a few little tweaks. So I ended up moving him out of this area. My initial run had him at 4, and then there was, again, you don't need to go to the details, but Franz could have been here. But I've got Desmond Bane in that tier 8 group. But look, we are getting into this area where we're talking about drafting players in the 70s and the 60s. Round 6, maybe round 7, of players who still can have above average contributions in 5+ categories. Now, you might also, 30 minutes in, ask, why did I use the top 200 as with the averages? Why didn't you use 156 as a standard Yahoo league size? Because, here's why. I think 200 is more representative. It incorporates streaming because, let's be fair, with 156 players drafted, you are going to have players go onto the injured spot immediately. You might, let's say you have 24 injured guys within a week of the season, right? So that puts you at 180 players already on rosters, plus throw in the ability to stream, then that next 20 players is still useful. You are going to be considering that. So I think the top 200 is a general player pool that you will be considering in fantasy. And that's why I use that number. Tier 9 has 3 players in it. 2 of these guys, Onyeka Okongwu and Emmanuel Quickley, were on the 4 or 5 category borderline. I did include them here. But we're talking about guys who can get pretty late here. Okongwu at 97. Quickley's at 100 on ESPN. Mikal Bridges at 85 on Yahoo. Also, what's going on at ESPN where Mikal Bridges is going at 54? That's insane. But if you're looking for a guy who can be a stat stuffer, or at least an above average contributor in 5+ categories, these are all just 5s. These are available late. And there's 2 guys, and I'd love to know if you can guess who the 2 players are in tier 10 who are available outside the top 100, who according to my projections have 5 above average categories. I think you'll be surprised. Aaron Gordon and Scoot Henderson. Yeah. Now, Aaron Gordon improved his shooting out of sight. His defensive stats dropped off, but he had good points and threes and rebounds and assists. His field goals and free throws were pretty solid. Scoot Henderson could be points and threes, assists and steals and free throws. 5 categories. All right? That's 5 categories. And he is the lowest ranked player that I had, Scoot, and he was, again, a bit of a borderline 4 or 5 category above average player. But I think that's something. When you're considering a later round pick, when you're really looking at specialists, hey, do I take Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to hit me 2.5 threes? Or Scoot gives me above average in 5. I don't know. I think that, and that's not even including upside and flyer potential and that sort of stuff. I know the concept of this is foreign and it might be a little confusing, but I hope that there is some value in this. What we're going to do in some of the coming up tier shows is look at groupings. Hey, let's tier the rebound, block, field goal percentage guys. Let's tier the unicorns. Threes, blocks, free throw percentage. Let's look at the PRA guys. You'll notice Domantas Sabonis was absent from this list. And because when you're looking at attacking certain groupings, I think it can be more instructive than strict positional requirements. I hope, anyway. Let me hype the video. Leave your comments. You can tell me if you think this idea is dumb. I get it. It's non-traditional. It's something you wouldn't have seen before. And I think there is utility in it. I hope you find utility in it. And yeah, maybe don't be too quick to be a harsh judge on the format. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. Hype it up. See ya.